as we wait confirmation of the incoming Secretary of State, the outgoing Secretary was in Paris this Saturday as part of a conference to secure a diplomatic way out of the Syrian conflict. John Kerry told diplomats he has now received assurances from the Syrian President, Bashar al-Assad, that he was ready to begin serious negotiations. Well, talks have been taking place this weekend in both Paris and Geneva as world powers struggle to agree on a political solution to the Syrian war. Well, for more on these diplomatic efforts, we can cross now to Geneva to speak with Alexandre Vautravers, a security expert at the University of Geneva. Thank you so much for speaking with us here on France 24 this morning. We understand that the opposition in Syria are ready to negotiate. President Assad also apparently ready to begin talks. So why have we not come any closer to a ceasefire? Where's the optimism?
Well, two things. First of all, you mentioned the opposition. There's no membership card for the opposition. And the real threat today is that this group of rebel alliances is today so disputed, so weak, that it may actually turn into the Islamic State, that it may be a relay of power of the Islamic State. This is one weakness, one scare. And the other problem is that within the negotiation, within the diplomatic rounds, we see very clearly there are two completely different ways of achieving a peace in Syria.
We understand from recent events that let's talk about the rebel opposition groups in Aleppo. They appear to be on the brink of losing that territory. Palmyra was briefly lost to the Islamic State group last night. It has now been retaken by the Syrian government. But that suggests too that the government is vulnerable. How do these events change the dynamic in the quest for a peaceful solution?
I think in the long run, it doesn't change much because there is very clearly an extremely strong Syrian army which has been reconstituted and supported by the Russians in particular. They now have the upper hand. This is very clear. And the Islamic State is losing its territory, it's losing its grounds. Aleppo is a very good example of that. What we have seen in Palmyra for the last 24 hours essentially is a raid, while the Islamic State is afraid that it will lose its strongholds. It is deploying raids to try and shift the focus or the attention of the fight in other places of the country. But these are temporary raids. Of course, they are skirmishes. They will produce destructions and deaths, but one should not be mistaken for the other. The Islamic State clearly is very much under pressure.
And just finally, before we leave you, Mr. Vautravers, we have the new Trump administration, which has been voted in. We've just been hearing this morning about the likely pro-Russian Secretary of State, if he is indeed confirmed. How do you think this change of politics in the US will change things vis-à-vis Syria?
You talked about change and politics. It's one and the same word. I will just remind you and your viewers that George W. Bush was elected on a program to reduce military spending and essentially an isolationist policy. And of course, you know what happened after 9/11, the exact opposite. So the people who are going to be in charge of this administration are going to be confronted to reality just like their forebears.
Alexandre Vautravers speaking to us from Geneva this morning. Thank you so much for giving us that analysis here on France 24. Well, let's